Hi, my name is Mark Florence. I'm the co-chairman of the Energy Utilities Committee at BritCham. And we've just come off the back of a very interesting session at SIEW, Singapore International Energy Week. We had 4 topics we covered in that event. And we're going to talk about one of those topics now. The first one was the keynote given by a big supporter of the chamber, Tom, who is also the regional, well, he's the regional director for Southeast Asia for climate and energy. And also Tim Rockwell. Tim is our chairman for the British Chamber. There was also Simon Wilde, who joined us as well. But what I'd like to do actually is just hand over to you, Tim, because you've been involved in quite a lot of the SIEW event over the last 3 or 4 days. And before we actually talk about the area that you talked about, or moderated at least, in the session we just had, what were your overall thoughts about SIEW and what the key takeaways really?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. And it was great to have just had that session. But reflecting back on the week, back to Monday, it was tremendous just to have a hybrid event where we had 350 people in the room and then many thousands dialed in virtually as well. We heard a lot of conversation, but I think what we've done as we've gone through the week is managed to build up the pieces. So at the beginning, there was a lot of talk on collaboration. And the event that we've just done, the BritCham event, the think tank as part of the official program, we really started to talk about what does collaboration mean. I mean, it's great to hear Simon Wilde from the UK regulator Ofgem talking about how he's willing to share experience and bring regulators together. And a good example on that is interconnectivity. That was a big topic of the week and one of the panels that I chaired on the first day. And the region needs more interconnectivity, not least to make more stable grids, but to move more green electrons around the region. And of course, the UK has got plenty of interconnectivity, both into the European Union, but also into other countries. And it's currently got the world's longest interconnector into Norway. So Simon particularly said that was some experience in terms of how do you run interconnectors so that they operate on a fair basis and bring that stability and resilience that's needed. I'm going to ask Tom now kind of his reflection on that as well. And it was great, Tom, to partner with you as part of the British High Commission. So thanks very much. But perhaps you can give some of your reflections and some of the work that you've seen in Southeast Asia.
Yeah, thanks, Tim, and thanks for having me. I mean, I think Singapore International Energy Week is always about that sort of collaboration between public and private sector, and it was true this year as well. I think from the public sector, throughout the session we've just been on, there was a very clear call from all the speakers for certainty in terms of policy and in terms of addressing the sort of gap between long-term goals, long-term commitments to net zero, and that implementation. So it's a key issue the UK has in mind, including in our own net zero strategy, which we published recently. So that is absolutely the way to stimulate private sector investment. And there was some important examples of that, attempting to give policy certainty this week at Singapore International Energy Week in terms of RFPs for renewables, for example. I like the emphasis too on the sort of chain effect, I think was the term used between the financial sector and the real economy. So that sort of ability to drive that and the ability of the private sector to anticipate that sort of change, set internal carbon prices and the role of the financial sector. And it's a key issue that we're hoping to give more of a spotlight to at COP26. I agree with you about the connectivity stuff, and there were some good announcements this week about renewable energy trading around the region and measures to attempt to stimulate that. I think the final point I would just make is that just coming back to our strategy, is about the sort of the need for a just transition in the region. So COP26, I think we'll see a big push around that, and we will be focusing all our ambition, aligning that with a principle of protecting the most vulnerable, giving citizens choice, and making sure that the biggest polluters pay. So I was really delighted to see a couple of days ago the Philippines Energy Minister talking about the role of energy transition councils, for example, which are COP26 vehicle that we've established in bringing together all those different actors and voices in encouraging change and enabling it. So thanks.
Yeah, I think that's good reflection, Tom. And on day 2, I chaired a panel on technology. And it was quite a lively session, actually. It was the last session of the day, and it followed the High Commissioner, Cara Owen. And she was reflecting on some of the things you've mentioned there, Tom, about an inclusive transition. I think our technology session really spoke as well about some of the things we've been doing in BritCham this year, which is how do you bring the technology into the system? How do you finance carbon capture, for instance, which was one of the events that we did earlier this year. And I think reflecting on that was really important, because in a lot of ways the technology is there, but it's not in the system because it needs to be enabled through finance and through projects. So I thought that was an interesting one. But of course, in this region, we're going to need different solutions. It's not a copy-paste model from the UK by any means, but what are you seeing, Tom, in your work that's slightly different to in Southeast Asia to what we might see in the UK?
Yeah, I think I would say that the economic arguments are starting to resonate here. So far more than sort of making the case in moral terms, I think that sort of competitiveness is really starting to land. And I think that's what is starting to sort of shift the dial in terms of ambition. So if you think about this region containing so many economies that are competitive and parts of global value chains, they have really started to recognize that getting on board with this transition will make them more competitive, and that will attract the FDI that they're looking for. So, a great practical example of how that transition can support that FDI is in our UK's Global Green Investment Summit last week, which attracted nearly £10 billion of FDI into the UK's green industrial revolution. So there is a clear example there of how that can happen. And we've seen that around the region too, where there is policy certainty. So, billions of FDI have flowed into Vietnam, Thailand and Malaysia, where there has been clear policy certainty about areas like offshore wind, for example, and that's really stimulated. So I think I would say that these economic arguments are really important in terms of convincing governments in this region to take that step.
Yeah, and I think, I like to say that the UK doesn't just produce booklets, pamphlets, studies, but actually walk the talk. And it was great to hear Sembcorp talk about some of the work, particularly happening in the northeast of England, some of the industrial cluster decarbonisation, which of course is needed in this region. And here Henry from the Catapults talking about some of the initiatives that are being taken in transportation. And I think sharing some of that across the region. And I'm keen to build this super highway, if you like, or super corridor between the UK and Singapore and into the region. And it's not a one-way corridor by any means. There's plenty of tech that's being developed here, which could be applied just as equally into the United Kingdom and into Europe. So I think, BritCham's ready, and we're really keen to kind of make that work across this, let's call it a super highway, a super corridor for infrastructure and technology. So all in all, a really good week. I'm really pleased that you could be part of this, Tom, and it's great to see BritCham's profile so high at Singapore International Energy Week. And when I say BritCham, I really mean Britain and the work and what we've got to offer.
I agree.
Thanks, Tim Rockwell and Tom Moody. Tom, thanks very much again for your support, as I mentioned earlier. It's always great to have the UK's government's views on these things. And of course, good luck next week in COP26. Any tips, any insights?
Well, I think I would say that, we can't give away any secrets, obviously, but I think ASEAN will be well represented and there will be lots of good progress. We're cautiously optimistic, of course, but there's going to be lots to watch across those 2 weeks. So stay tuned.
We certainly will. Well, thank you very much. Thanks to both of you. The next session, we're going to talk the next short, interlude, we'll talk about energy transition and scaling up investments in Southeast Asia, which was our second topic in the SIEW event with Allard Noy. Thank you.